Source for everything paranormal. Para-X. The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Merry meets and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. But tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Tonight we're going to be talking about World War II artifacts with my guest, Richard Kimmel, who is the author of the book World War II Ghosts, Artifacts Can Talk. Richard always had a strange feeling while touching wartime artifacts from the end of World War II, giving rise to his fascination. Always having an avid interest in military artifacts, beginning his collection with wartime postage stamps and a few given to him from returning GIs, kind of set him off on a continuous journey down the paranormal road. Now, when not investigating artifacts, he's an active member of the New Jersey Ghost Organization. And using pendulums to help direct latent energy, he works at major investigations and historical events. As usual, for those of you who are listening to the show live this Thursday night and have questions or comments for Richard, you can come over to paraxradionetwork.com and join those who already are in the chat room. All right, Richard, you know what? It seems like a very long time since you've been stirring my cauldron, and I'm very glad to have you back.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Marla.
Yeah, well, you know, there's so much to cover, and this is a really interesting book. It's paranormal, it's historical, it's a really interesting book. So let me start by saying that during your military days as a combat photographer with the Army, you heard experiences about various encounters because you were living in the barracks that dated back to 1940s. But at the time, you kind of looked the other way and kind of figured that it was somebody else's imagination. But you did always have a strong interest in military artifacts, and at some point you realized you had that strange feeling, when you picked them up. What were your thoughts when that kind of happened, when you started feeling things with the artifacts?
Well, it was very, very interesting at the time. I have one little story to tell about that. I was photographing a patrol coming back from a maneuver, and I snapped a picture of them. And when I processed the picture, it was very interesting because it was a 6-man patrol, and there were only 5 men in the picture. And I noticed that in the middle of the patrol, the picture showed an image, a very faint image of an individual. I found out later that there was an accident where that patrol was, and one of the individuals was taken, to the field hospital where he passed away. And in the picture, he was still with his patrol.
Really?
Very, very interesting because, I never saw something like that before. And I wish to this day that I would have kept all of my films when I left the service, And as a good boy, I turned everything in like I was supposed to.
Yeah. Back then you had to go by the rules, right?
Right.
Well, I'm going to jump into left field for a minute because I don't know your thoughts about reincarnation, but do you think that your interest in the World War II artifacts or military artifacts must be attached to a past life? Maybe?
Anything
maybe.
is possible, Marla. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
I've had several dreams where I was in a different uniform, and it was very interesting because the uniform that I had on was that of a German officer.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
interesting, too.
I was walking back and forth on the street, and then the next thing I knew, I was in some type of a tunnel, and I was accompanying, of all people, Adolf Hitler. And we got to a certain point where we stopped, and he went on further, and he went into his offices, his quarters, whatever you want to call them. And I woke up at that point. Now, I never had that dream again, but it was very, very interesting on it because it was almost like I was actually there. I had felt.
Kind of like a lucid dream rather than a regular dream.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I think we all dream about things from the past, but we just don't get it. We don't, wake up and say, well, that's really weird. Why'd that come into my head? I would never have thought of that. And yet, I think maybe in our DNA, it sticks with us from lifetime to lifetime. Sometimes it squeaks out.
See, my parents were German.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather came to this country. He was an officer in the Royal Prussian Army. And he, unfortunately, shot and killed another officer over a woman. They had a duel. And he was told at that time that he could either face what they called a court martial, whatever they called it in those days, or he could leave the service. So he chose to leave the service, and he came to this country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very, the family has a good history.
Yeah, and you're...
It goes back to World War II. And his two brothers, they were twins. And one of them came to this country prior to World War II, just prior to World War II. And unfortunately, my grandfather wasn't home at the time when he came, and he had to leave, and he went to visit somebody else further west. And that was the last we heard of him. They went back to Germany, and then World War II broke out.
Sorry, I was getting a question from the chat room here for you. All right, so, I was just talking to you about reincarnation and all that, but this question goes a step farther, and it's something that I didn't think about. She was asking that, do you feel that the search for artifacts may be a search for answers in your own past life?
That's a possibility. That's a very good possibility. Because, as a young boy, I grew up during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Newark, New Jersey at the time. And when the war was over, the neighborhood GIs were coming home that lived in the neighborhood. And one of them gave me a German badge that he had taken off of a dead German officer. And I got strange feelings from it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know what they were at the time.
Little did you know that paranormal door was opening wide for you.
Right. That's where it basically started, but I didn't get interested that much in the paranormal at that point in time until many, many years later. And we can talk about that, on the second half that you want to talk about. But,
We'll talk about some of that stuff,
very interesting, I know it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell a little bit more about the book because in it you've joined forces with the renowned psychic Jane Doherty, who's been on my show a couple of times, and really like Jane. Yes. And also there was a shamanic journeyer and Reiki master, Linda Palandrano, I think that's how you pronounce it. And then you have the New Jersey ghost organization psychic Maryanne Vasnelis. Oh my God, everybody's got not weird names, but difficult names today. So, it was the three of you telling the tale about, you have 52 wartime artifacts that you write about in the book. And
right.
Even dividing it by three, I mean, it's a lot of information.
Some of the artifacts were not actually mine. Okay. Mm-hmm. They were sent to me by different people to, evaluate them for them. And the paranormal aspect, I know it. And then I mailed them back to them. But I still have quite a few artifacts myself.
Mm-hmm. Psychometry in of itself, is picking up and holding things and getting feelings from them. I've always been really interested with that. And, I've worked with mediums too. And I had when my stepfather was over in World War II, he brought home a sword that, again, came from a fallen German soldier and a gun. And my friend Victoria, she was over here I showed it to her. I said, "Look," but I didn't exactly tell her what it was. I said, "Look what I found," And she picked it up and she held it for about 10 seconds and dropped it. She said, "This is bad. This is really bad." And so, it really is a fascinating ability. And maybe everybody has it, but maybe we don't all think about it or use it or something. I don't know.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute. But Jane Doherty experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Okay, yeah. But I also want to say that, this book is a study of paranormal archaeology and latent energy, and you are a paranormal archaeologist. So what is paranormal archaeology?
To simplify it, it's the handling and the researching of an object that was from the war, no matter what it may be, and to research that and come up with some answers under it. And I don't want to get into it right now because we talked about this earlier with the use of my pendulum, but that's besides the point. It just, it's like I'm an archaeologist of military artifacts. I don't dig artifacts, but I handle them. I handle them for people. I tell them all about them, whatever I can find out. And I work with two different psychics at that time. I was working with two different psychics. Jane was one, and another psychic. And what I would do would be to test the object first to see if there's energy coming from it. And then I would contact Jane, and we get together, and she would give me her impressions of it. And that's all in the book. And I would also give it to my other psychic, and she would tell me more about it. And what it came down to was they told me things I already knew about the object, but But then they told me things that I didn't know. And when I researched those things, I found about 90% of them to be true.
Wow.
You always run to a dead end sometimes.
Well, sure. Nothing's 100%.
No. That's basically what I do when I get an object.
Are you still collecting? Are people still sending them to you?
Once in a while. I belong to a military club here in New Jersey, and I usually set up a table there. I haven't set up, for a while now, but when I do, and people come in, or even other dealers that are there, they may bring something over to me occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
They ask me to take a look at this, and I can tell them about it. But it's getting less and less. I'm getting older. And I hate to make the trip all the time.
Yep. Sometimes it's all the way too far to go. All right. So, when did you get involved in paranormal investigation?
When I joined my daughter's group, when she first started.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing that I do with the group is I will go, if we go into a historic building, a house, okay, I will go with one of the group psychics, okay, I will go room to room, and again, with the use of my pendulum, I can detect where there is energy. Mm-hmm. I'm not psychic, and I'm not clairvoyant, but I have a feeling with the pendulum. I know it. And we'll make notes of those areas. And those are the areas where the rest of the group will go to, to do the actual investigation. Mm-hmm. What they come up with. And then at the end of the investigation, we sit down and we discuss everything. And what we will do in a lot of cases, it will involve the owner of the building, of the house, sit down with us, and we'll go over with him exactly what we found out. And, it's very interesting because there are some instances where, you just don't know what's going to happen. I'll give you one instance. I'm a member of the East Brunswick Elks. Mm-hmm. And we had a meeting there one night, and with my daughter's group. And we were in a separate room. We're all sitting around the table. And this goes back to the Revolutionary War. There are revolutionary soldiers that are buried on the Elks Club property. Mm. And what made it interesting was we're sitting around the table, and one of the members was getting a little, antsy about what he was talking about, asking questions and stuff. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, we saw, or I shouldn't say we saw, the psychic saw a revolutionary soldier standing in the one end of the room, the image. And all of a sudden, I could feel some energy coming through me, passing around over to this other individual of our group, or the meeting there. He was being very obnoxious. And all of a sudden, he was like knocked off his chair onto the floor.
Wow.
And this is, it frightened a few of the people that were there. Mm-hmm. But it was very interesting, I know it.
Yeah. When that happens, that's really out of the blue. Yeah.
We investigated a few haunted, houses, and now the group only does very limited, but certain specific things they'll do now. The group.
Mm-hmm. And you might as well mention, because we've been talking about your daughter a couple of times, and her name is Karen Timper. And for people that listen to the show, she was on several weeks ago talking about the Hindenburg ghosts. So just want to give her her due. Instead of her daughter, she got it. Yeah, now she knows. All right. So
That was very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you two have written books together as well. You know, you aren't on your separate. Well, you did the Hindenburg one too, but yeah, father-daughter. Yeah, that's a good. It makes a good team. It does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay, so why do you think that some spirits are still attached to artifacts?
Very simply, they have unfinished business here, and that's making it very simple. Anyway, they have unfinished business, or they feel that they did wrong at the time. The artifact on it, but whatever it was on it, and it's just basically on there with. I always tell people when I talk that there are human spirits that are the ones that are still with us. You communicate with them. Ghosts are something altogether different. Ghosts are images from the past that you cannot communicate with. And an example of this is on several occasions in houses, I've walked into a room and it was images of individuals that were there in their time in that particular room, doing what they did at that particular time, dressed in the clothes of that particular time again, and you can't communicate with these people. You can see them, they can't see you. And I've had that on several occasions on it. And the most one that stands out the most to me was when I visited California and we were aboard the Queen Mary. Queen Mary is a very haunted ship.
Yes, it is.
It was used in World War II to transport German prisoners back here to the United States. And I was on the forward deck facing the one gun mount that was still there on the Queen Mary. I had gun mounts on the Queen Mary at that time, one in the front and one in the rear. And my son and my wife were down by the one gun mount in the front. And I was starting to walk towards them, and I had my video camera running at the time. And out of nowhere, a swarm of thousands of bees came. And I'm trying to swat these away. I can't touch them. They can't touch me. And I could see my wife and son motioning me to come. I finally got down there. And after that, I have this on video to prove it. After that, I talked to one of the ship's officers, and I told him what it was. And he said, that's one of our hauntings here on the ship. When the conditions are right, every once in a while, the swarm of bees will come. I have this on video, so it was because the camera kept running as I was going down.
I'd be running too. If the camera's running, I would be running too. But yeah, when the first time I went on to the Queen Mary, it had nothing to do with paranormal then. But when you walk in there and on the ship, all of a sudden you are transported back in time. You just can't help it. I mean, it's probably different now, but back then it was just like you would walk in the 1940s or 30s, 20s, whenever it was. But yeah, it was just the weirdest but good feeling. It was like very comforting to walk on that ship. But
oh yes,
but there's a lot of spots.
To see on that ship, a lot to see, a lot of history behind it, and especially down below decks. where they kept the German prisoners.
Yeah. That's kind of amazing. I don't know if they still, do things down there, but, people can go down and just pick up on those things. I know several TV shows have been there.
Yes.
But, I haven't been on it, but I was by it a couple of years ago, and they've got a big hotel there now, and it's changed a lot, but I hope the inside kept that integrity that it had, because that's really important.
Yes. Very interesting.
Yeah. You're lucky you got to go, because I think everybody, when people think of Southern California and hauntings, they want to go on the Queen Mary, and it's a good thing that it's still there.
Yes.
Nice ship. Yeah, it's a beautiful ship. We're going to take a break in a minute, but I'm going to ask you a question like, it's kind of like the question that if I were asking you which one of your kids is your favorite, but do you have a favorite artifact?
Yes, I do. I have an associate friend of mine in England, and he has a little room with a bed in it where his sister comes and stays overnight. And to make a long story short, he has artifacts in there. And one night when she was there visiting, she woke up in the middle of the night and saw a German pilot standing down at the foot of her bed. Frightened her very much. It won't harm her, but frightened her by seeing it. And she told her brother, you have to get rid of this flag that he had. Got a flag in the room, okay, a German flag. Mm-hmm. And again, to make it very short, he sent the flag to me. He said, "Rich, I want you to have this flag, okay?" He told me what the story was about it. This was the flag that draped the coffin of a German pilot that was shot down over Germany in the last days of the war, and he's still with it. And the reason he's with it is because his sister was hurting for money at one time. She sold all of his medals and decorations. And this was the flag, and I said, and he follows his artifacts no matter where they are. And I have the flag. And it was a flag that was presented for use on the coffin by the company that he took his pilot training with. And I also have a piece of his gravestone. He's buried on the property where they lived. And I can't display the flag, obviously, on there because it would raise controversy. But and believe it or not, this may sound strange, but I say goodnight to him every night.
That's not strange.
I know that I know when he's here because I can smell the distinct smell of pipe smoke. And German officers smoke pipes. And so I know when he's here. He just follows his artifacts no matter where they go.
Oh, I like that.
That's really the favorite piece that I have.
That's kind of amazing. I like that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Richard, you're going to give us a few tips on the pendulum and your sixth sense, and we'll hear some more about some of the artifacts that have talked. So everybody, stay put, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Cauldron will be right back, so don't go away. If you end up with webbed feet, remember, you've been warned.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. Covenant House is the national leader providing safe housing for youth, 50 years strong. Every youth who walks into Covenant House gets clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. So, look closer at Covenant House and help us fight youth homelessness. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid of? Horror Paranormal Show Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What are you afraid of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction. We are ready to scare you.
Para X. Missed an episode of Stirring the Cauldron? Then be sure to check out marlabrooks.com and check out the archive. And while you're there, check out Marla's weekly Witches Oracle card reading. Explore the site to find many great resources, such as information on tarot, oracle readings, metaphysical consultations, and links to all of Marla's books. That's marlabrooks.com. Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
My guest tonight is Richard Kimmel, and we're talking about his book, World War II Ghosts, Artifacts Can Talk. So let's talk about the pendulum. When did you kind of develop an interest in using one, and give some pointers?
Well, I was home after I had open heart surgery, and I happened to be watching a television program where they were using pendulums. They were playing games with them. And I said to myself, I'm going to get a pendulum. Believe it or not, the next day in the mail, this tiny wooden cross was delivered to me. And it was a keychain. It was from a religious organization looking for a contribution.
Mm-hmm.
What I did, I took the keychain off and I made another hole in the top of the cross, and I put a piece of, cotton string through the coal.
Mm-hmm.
And cotton is impervious to magnetic energy.
Mm.
And wood is also. And I used this as a pendulum. And I was thinking, I had a picture of my father, my mother, and my one daughter. And I took the picture and I held the pendulum. I didn't say anything to the pendulum. I never direct the pendulum. And I held it over my head. I mean, my son's head. Not my son. It was my daughter's head. And that was Karen. And it didn't do anything. When I held it over my father's head, it started to rotate without any direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, my father had a while ago passed away before that.
Mm-hmm.
My mother also. And I said, boy, this detects death. That was my first impression.
Mm.
And that's when I started to take the pendulum and use it on some of the military artifacts that I had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't direct it. I never direct the pendulum, as I said. And when the pendulum rotates, it tells me that there is energy coming from that particular artifact.
Mm-hmm.
What the energy is, I don't know. That's when my psychics come into play. And like I said, they will tell me things about the artifact that I knew and things I didn't know. And how I test a psychic is very simple. I will, give them an artifact, and I won't tell them anything about it. I let them handle it. And as I said, they will tell me things that I already know and things that I don't know. And I research those things that I don't know, and they come out to be true about 90% of the time. There's always that 10% that you run into a roadblock with.
Yeah, for sure.
I know the psychic is legitimate. They're not making up stories.
Right.
Of the artifacts.
Jane
Doherty was very good.
Oh yeah, she definitely is. So when do you ever use the pendulum with the artifacts, and do you ask it maybe questions, yes or no questions about the artifact, or you leave that to the psychics?
No, I leave that to the psychics.
Okay.
I leave that to the psychics on it, to ask the questions on it. And you mentioned one in particular that you were interested in, which was a Japanese pistol.
Yes.
Now, when I had that pistol was sent to me by an individual to check it out. I was always getting feelings from it. As soon as I held that pistol, I got a very, very strange feeling. The pistol is what they term a Japanese Nambu, Nambu, I believe it is, pistol. This pistol was used on the Bataan Death March
during
World War II by a Japanese officer. And he would ride up and down the line of the soldiers, the prisoners that were being marched. And if one of the prisoners fell down, he would shoot them. And he's very remorseful. Psychic was able to contact him. He's very remorseful of what he did. This is why he was still with the pistol. And eventually, I forget which psychic did now, whether it was Jane or my other psychic, was able to cross him over and put his mind at ease again.
Wow.
This was a very, a terrible time. And that death march was a very terrible death march.
Yeah.
So I can understand why he was very remorseful about what he had done after the Lord of Spirits. This was one of the very interesting pieces.
Well, I would think that when that was his job, and if he did not do what he was told, he would be shot. I mean, I don't think a lot of them, some of them might have enjoyed the icky of it, but I think a lot of them just had to follow orders against their will, but they had to. So, yeah, and then there comes the guilt.
Yes. And all the psychic impressions about this and the story about it is all in the book.
Well, there's also a story about a D-Day haunting, which was called The Necklace. You want to tell us about that?
Yes. Everyone knows what D-Day was. And the unit that went in and was able to get up the cliffs and push the Germans back, into the city. I forget the actual name of the city now. But this necklace was made by a German soldier to give to his girlfriend back in Germany. And it's a very interesting necklace because it's a hand-carved wooden swastika on a gold chain. And the necklace basically tells the story on it. If people read the book, they'll get all the psychic impressions about this necklace. And I'm just trying to right now find the page where I have this on this necklace because there's something interesting about it. I can find it in 1 second, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the stories that all of them in there are very worth waiting for. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is in chapter 7 in the book. It just, it's hard to get into the psychic impressions on this because the necklace was liberated from a German POW that was taken at St. Merigles by Sergeant Ace Furby. He was with the 3rd Battalion, the 505th Infantry of the 82nd Airborne Division on June 6, 1944. Ace crossed over in 1996 at the age of 90. This necklace was given to me by Ace Furby, who got this necklace. And the psychic impressions, it makes me start to, get choked up a little bit. I know it. Because Jane Doherty's first comments had a tone of sarcasm, as she stated. So this is a real swastika on a gold chain that someone actually wore. Never thought I would actually ever hold one. But Jane began asking, I began asking Jane actually, if she would be able to receive impressions, even though she seemed repulsed by it. The response was positive. She said, my personal opinion of the symbols cloud my psychic impressions. Fortunately, I did not live through that era, she said.
Yeah.
So my emotional connection is limited to what I learned in history class, she said. So it should not be too hard to receive impressions and interpret them objectively. I know it. I don't want to give all these impressions away on it because, like I said, I want people to read the book.
Sure. But
It's very, very interesting. I know it. I have the necklace. It's one of my artifacts that I have, and everyone that I show it to says, "Boy, what a nice piece this was, hand carved." It's not, the swastika is straight. It's not tilted like they normally are. But he did a real good job on this. Whoever did this, I know it.
And he gave it to his girlfriend, and then got it back or something, or how?
No, Ace Furby took it from him.
Oh, okay.
When they invaded the town.
Oh, okay.
But he gave it to me in later years. I know it, but he's passed away now.
Is there any type of artifact that you would not accept?
I don't believe so.
Okay, good.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I guess some people specialize in something and they won't do this or what, for whatever reason. Yeah. So that would just
I've had artifacts, not Jane Doherty, but my other psychic that I used at the time. When I would hand it to her, it started to burn her hand. She threw it back to me right away. In fact, strange things happen with these, and that's why you can't guess at these things. You have to have a psychic involved.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure you have a legitimate psychic.
I was just going to say that. Yes.
Not legitimate. So that's why I always test them all the time.
Yeah.
I still do that with a couple in the group that we have.
Well, you have to keep them on their toes, right? I mean, that's how it goes. There's another story about a young man and his armband.
Yes.
That was touching, yeah.
That is a little bit interesting. The armband if I recall correctly, I'm just trying to look at my book real quick here. Oh my gosh.
Well, there's so many, you can't keep track of them anyway, you know.
This cloth armband is a swastika. It was worn by a Hitler youth.
Mm.
And it was, worn with what they call Aryan pride by the member of the youth I knew at the time. And it's a very interesting piece. Hitler Youth was very active during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And psychic impressions that Jane Doherty gave, and Maryanne, my other psychic at the time, they, at first, Maryanne, she began picking up hatred, and very clearly the name of Christopher.
Mm.
And she began seeing a gun, a rifle, with a bayonet attached to it. And that somehow it played a part in getting this armband. Just to tell a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
But this armband belonged to a Hitler youth.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer have that armband. I forget who I gave that to a few years back.
Yeah.
But, it's very interesting because, Hitler Youth, believe it or not, they actually manned and played, certain things in the war, actually manning some of the guns.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. That they did play a part in the World War II. And, I met one individual here in New Jersey who was a member of the Hitler Youth during World War II.
Wow.
And the stories that he could tell are unbelievable. They really are.
I bet. Yeah, Hitler knew what he was doing, grabbing the kids when they were young.
Believe it or not, he still had his uniform.
Oh, wow. That's something else. I mean, you go back that far and every time you talk about Hitler, anybody talks about Hitler or swastikas, and, we all take a step back. I mean, those that know about it. Because that was just, part, and you think of that as World War II, but also World War II happened in the South Pacific, and it was all over the place.
Yes.
It was something else. Okay, one more story, if you can. Soldier's V-mail letter to Jenny.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. This was an email, well, V-mail, I should say, not email. What they did in those days, during the war, they would photograph the actual letter itself. And that's what they sent these out, the V-mails they called them. It was very interesting. This was one of many thousands of V-mail letters that were prominent during World War II. These letters, either written by a serviceman to someone on the home front, or by a loved one writing to someone in the service. It worked both ways. It was written on a special form that was reduced by photomechanical means to save space. And it's very interesting on there because what they talked about some things were actually crossed off. They were blacked out,
censored,
that they couldn't talk about. But it's very, very interesting on there. And this was the letter that was written by a soldier to his girlfriend Jenny. And the whole story about this is like I say in the book. I know it, and it's very, very interesting. And there were psychic impressions from this, and the main one was by Jane Doherty. She said this artifact was obviously a letter or a note. Therefore, she said, I explained to her what it was, and that initially I had picked up some latent energy from it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that in this case, I should do this psychic investigation, and also with similar types of letters.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the reason why you received energy from this letter, I told Jane, is that the man who had written it did not come back from the war.
Mm.
That he died in the war. Jane did not receive any additional feelings, so we closed the session on that one. But it was something was really, it touches your heart, something like this on the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I have letters myself that were not from the war. I have all the letters that I had written, and that my wife at the time had written to me when I was in the service.
Mm-hmm.
I still have all of those letters, and I know they'll stay in the family.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kept. I mean, it's like I told you the other day, I have a suitcase full of my dad's correspondence to his family from World War II. And, they're just, it's taking a step back and
Just thinking about this now, I'm 87 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about this now, about that letter, it actually brings tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's such, these letters are so interesting, I know it, and there's not many around anymore.
Right, yeah.
This was the only I had seen for years, I know it.
Mm-hmm.
It just touches your heart. You can't help it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's heartwarming, and you get, if you know the people that they're from, like with my dad, I'm learning about him when he was, young and in war, things that, the way he talked and the way he looked at things and, because he wrote very long letters sometimes. And, it was just, it's nice to have that to look at and just learn something, especially when it's a parent, because they don't always let you know what they were like when they were younger, because, they don't want you to follow.
You just hope that things stay in the family.
Mm-hmm.
But I have picked up artifacts at different military shows, and what I had done, one I picked up was from a female that was in the Navy, and I had the name. She lived right here in New Jersey, so I did some research on it, and I was able to get a telephone number under that name. So I called the name. She has long passed away at the time, but I think it was the brother that I was able to contact, and I told him, I said, what I had her cap, I had her part of her uniform. He says, I don't know how this stuff ever got out of the family, he said. I told him, I said, you give me your address, and I'm going to return it to you.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's what I did. I returned it to him.
That
it was
makes
so great to get this stuff back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, things are missing, and it's bringing somebody home, even if it's a dress or a pair of shoes or even a letter. We're running out of time, as I always say. It's just too quick sometimes. But before we go, if people want to learn more about you or any of your books, where can you be found?
They could go to my website. I have problems. I'm having problems with my website lately on there, but they can, all my books, all of our books, Karen wrote with me, and my books are all still in print with Schiffer Publishing,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of the Karen talked to you about.
Yeah. What's the website? Is it WWPO or something like that?
Oh, I'm trying to think of it. I've been having a lot with my website. I'm making some changes on it right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're also on Facebook, so people can find you there, and probably you have, under the About thing on Facebook, it probably has that link to the website.
They can email me. Your email address is WW2, the number 2, PO, as in post office, at AOL.com.
Yeah.
If they have anything they want to talk to you about, they can email me. I'll be very happy to discuss it with them.
That's good of you. Thanks. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. We just, tip of the iceberg kind of thing. There was so much more that we could have talked about, and maybe someday we'll get back to it and pick up where we left off. But in the meantime, also we want to thank everybody who's listening in.
Also, the books are available through Amazon also, I believe.
Yeah, they are. I went looking. Yeah, they're there. All right. So until next time, everybody, blessed be, and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at the same time for another great guest and more fun. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2009.
You have been listening to the Para X Radio Network.